things that kept coming up again and again and again as a suggestion for transitions was somebody called Art Bell. I've heard of him. I've never actually heard him broadcast, but in America, he was for the longest time a legendary talk radio broadcaster. He began in pop radio actually as a DJ, and then he went into regular talk radio, and he discovered as he went along that if he dealt with topics of a paranormal nature or about UFOs or whatever, his audience ratings went up. And so he basically compounded that as he went along and did years and years and years of a broadcast called Coast to Coast, something he retired from quite a lot for various reasons, but he became a legend in that field for dealing with subjects that might be ridiculed in other media or in other forums. But he said, let's do this open-mindedly. He may not have agreed with everything that was said, but he was willing to entertain it as a possibility and allow guests to say their piece without being mocked mercilessly as they are in other areas of the media. That gained him a phenomenal audience. I think he was syndicated at one time on 460 radio stations, and he had an audience some nights of around 15 million listeners. Obviously, that's phenomenal. He died in 2018 at the age of 72 of what was thought to be heart problems, because he definitely had heart problems, but was actually, according to the coroner, an overdose of prescription pills. He'd had terrible backache, he had pneumonia, and a whole bunch of stuff, plus his heart problems. But as I say, he was a legend, and people kept saying, please look at Art Bell, because if anybody is going to experience the transitions in an open-minded way, it would be him, the host of Coast to Coast. And when I went into the energy for him, he was falling. You know when people play the harp, they sit there and they strum the strings backwards and forwards. Well, there were strings here too, but they were horizontal. And he was falling past them, clutching at them one by one, trying to slow his descent, but he still was going down, suggesting that he did die over a period of time, a slow demise due to illness. When he reached the bottom of the drop, it curved around and went into darkness, and that's when he crossed over. And the next thing I saw was that he was being spewed out into that symbolic cave that I always see. There's no actual cave, but it helps me understand how somebody is feeling in this situation. And he popped out of this hole and landed in the cave. Interestingly, the cave was fairly dark, and it had in it four mounds of something, like little hills of something very, very dark. Now, I don't know very much about the guy at all, so it could be fears, it could be regrets, causes for shame, prejudices, or whatever it might have been. But these four humps on the ground, these heaps of something, were there confronting him before he could go further. And he really didn't want to face up to them. These were a legacy of his mortal side when he was in form. And now he was formless and eternal. He wanted to just pass them by and let them go. Had he decided to deal with them and confront them, he could have caused them to evaporate, because in the kind of metaphorical way I can do these things, I went over and I prodded at one of the mounds, one of the heaps, and it immediately just exploded into a cloud of, it wasn't dust, it was more like soot, because it was dark, representing the darkness of the mound, but it exploded and then settled and was basically dealt with and gone. And he could have done that with all four, whatever these represent. He thought, no, I'm not doing that. And he wound his way around them to avoid them and came to a set of steps that led up to that tunnel I always see. He began to climb. It's like, okay, I'm done. Whatever that was, I'm leaving it behind now and I'm moving on. But it wasn't that easy, because these stairs that he was climbing seemed to be growing as he tried to get to the top of them. It's almost like an escalator or a staircase that's being built as you're climbing it. And it was basically Grace saying to Art Bell, okay, you don't want to deal with whatever those heaps represent, but at least turn around and acknowledge them. Acknowledge that they're there. Don't walk away from them. Accept that there are unresolved issues from the mortal side that may have to be reviewed later, but just accept that. Confront them. Don't walk away. He turned around and he surveyed the cave full of dark humps. And as he did so, the cave went dark. It's like, okay, now you can move on. And he was able to climb the steps and carry on up the tunnel. And this is where Art Bell's pictures became extremely interesting. There appeared to be some kind of cosmic trade-off. Like, if you will just turn around and acknowledge the issues you're leaving behind that you didn't confront, whatever they are, I have no idea, maybe something at a deep subconscious level even. But if you will do that, we have a gift for you. And the fact that he had acknowledged those dark heaps meant that he now got his reward. He carried on walking up the tunnel, and as he did so, there were symbolic windows. And when he looked out of one of the windows, the entire universe was there. Different realms, the different dimensions, not just the stars, but everything was there. Almost like Grace said, you've put all those years into helping people understand all these different phenomena. Now here's proof that you weren't far wrong. And his reaction was, it is true then. Oh, it is real. Oh, it is there. He was filled with wonder. And I didn't get the sense that he was a man of great wonder in life, in a way. A man of curiosity, perhaps, an open-minded man, but a pragmatic man, I thought, and practical and down to earth, ironically. But here he was given a glimpse of the reality of what he had been talking about on the radio for many, many years. I found that very moving, just the beauty of what was presented to him, of this reality that he'd only skimmed the surface of during his radio career. Here it was for real. He carried on up the tunnel, where I normally see a dome of light, which represents the membrane between, or the interface or the firewall between consciousness still being alive and whatever happens to you after death. Only in his case, it was like a globe on a pedestal. Only the various shapes, I guess, of the continents and stuff on it were raised up in the same way that printing presses used to be raised letters and stuff that the paper and the ink would go across to leave an imprint. It was that kind of thing. And he clung on to this globe. And the only thought in my head was that he is being allowed to glimpse the blueprint for the entire universe. Because he was about to become one with the entire universe. He was being allowed to see through the window on this globe how all the lines of inquiry he and his listeners have pursued over the years on the mortal side related to actual cosmic reality. I have never known anybody else be treated in that kind of way. His mind must have been wide open to such an extent that there was nothing to impede the truth coming in. And as I watched, the globe with Art Bell on it sank into the floor and into the light. And he was gone. A man who now possessed the blueprint for the universe itself. So clearly, he knew a few things. But what I took away from these pictures and what I found particularly encouraging was the value of daring to open your mind. Daring to trust. Daring to believe. And suspend our usual armor, our tools of denial like skepticism and cynicism, at least for long enough to say yes to the infinite possibilities that the universe has to offer us. So that seemed to be the gift that the universe gave him. Let go of old wounds, old fears, or whatever those heaps of black stuff represented. Let go of that. Turn your back on that. And we'll show you something that will make your entire broadcasting career seem valid. And thank you for being that guy who facilitated that. That's what it seemed to be. Trust, believe. Suspend skepticism. Be open to possibilities. That's what I learned from Art Bell. Thanks for watching, guys.